Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also in all smart TVs 2016 forward. By the way, you can catch it on YouTube too. Now on CFL Talk, joining me as usual is David Morassutti. Unfortunately, I have to admit I didn't go to the game on Sunday.
Saturday.
My explanation is real simple. It was a zoo. I knew it would be a zoo there to drive, and I'm a good hour and 45 minutes, almost 2 hours to the game if everything goes beautifully. It weren't going to go beautifully that day. So I said, you know what? I'll watch the game on TV and leave it at that. It meant I couldn't talk to the players or the coach, but we'll get to them first. Let's talk about Edmonton and Ottawa first. Is there anything you want to preface the week with? We'll talk about the injury to
Mm-hmm.
the Canadian quarterback, the superstar, the MOP, the best Canadian player, the Canadian MOP, the MOP. The guy would have had all kinds of hardware. We all believe that, and I think rightfully so. I guess I can start by asking this question because the injury was terrible the way it worked. I was telling you off air that Robertson went after him, had a hold of him. He got away, ran for some 20 plus yards. Later, Robertson got him, and that's when the injury happened.
Yeah.
Your comments on the injury and how this might affect, his glorious season that he's built on in the first 9 games.
Well, I don't think it takes away from what he's accomplished because, I was just checking right now. We brought up his stats last week, but, midway through the season, he's proven to be, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the CFL, if not top two, right? The only other one you can make a case for is better is Zach Collaros.
Yeah, but there's something about this kid that he's doing it on his own.
Yes.
You um, I shouldn't say that because that's not fair in the game of football. But the reason I say that is because you know he's scoring. Like when I say he's doing it on his own, I'm not saying his team isn't helping, but he's proficient. He's incredibly offensively um, amazing. And Caleros love him. You know how we feel. We both love the guy. I love Caleros. But Caleros, he'll get 2 touchdowns. He'll get a touchdown. His claim to fame, in my opinion, is that he's a great quarterback for Winnipeg because he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And if there's nothing we've seen in the Canadian Football League with the quarterbacks in recent memory, is there are a lot of mistakes. And that's where this kid has been different. The last couple of games, he's thrown a couple of interceptions, but they haven't been clean interceptions. They've been bouncy interceptions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and there's only one team in the CFL right now that has over 300 points scored.
Gee,
Um,
I wonder who that is.
I think it's the one with the quarterback that's setting, he's setting Canadian records, right? So he's a trailblazer that way.
Easy.
And obviously, this is not the ideal time for him to get injured. There's not much they can control
Is
on
there?
that. But you're about to see just how important Nathan Rourke is to the BC Lions.
Absolutely.
Because if Michael O'Connor comes in and he's not, I don't expect Michael O'Connor to come in and play Nathan Rourke's ability.
He was
But if
5 for 5 when he
yeah,
was 5 for 5. So
I have faith in Michael O'Connor to come in and be able to provide, I would say, stability at the position because it's going to be a lot to ask of him to be the savior because it's just not fair on his part because he's been the backup all year. But I do think, the talent that BC has should help Michael O'Connor. And I
Let
think,
let's be fair to Michael O'Connor and say that um, he's got something to prove. Absolutely, um, it's going to be a lot of pressure on him because of how successful he has to be to equal what Rourke, who he's replacing.
yeah, well, that's it, right? He's got big shoes to fill, and I do think though that he's in a decent position to do it because he's also in a way has been waiting for his opportunity too. People forget he spent all of last season behind Bo Levi Mitchell in Calgary. Well, technically he dropped down to the third guy because Jake Mayer took over as the back. When Bo Levi Mitchell went down. But this is somebody who's been in the CFL a few years. He knows the game. It's now a matter of it's up to him now to lead an offense, which is not something he's done yet. And it's funny because some people said, in a few of those blowout wins by BC, it would have been nice if Michael O'Connor had gotten a few more snaps just to be ready.
Yeah, but the numbers and then some people suggested that would eat away at records that were being made in each of those games. So yeah, it's you got to be careful, and that's up. That's time management by the coach, right? The head coach. He has to make those kinds of decisions. But this injury, what I didn't mention as well is that earlier, well, like you said, he got away. Robertson actually patted him on the head to say, "Good job, kid." And that's the irony. Robertson's the guy who took him down, and the injury happened. There was nothing. I don't think we saw anything there that says it was any kind of maliciousness, any kind of rough play. It was, oh my goodness, contact in football. Quelle surprise.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, like, and you were asking whether this impacts Nathan Rourke's, standing in the league. No, for me, it's not. It only does if this is one of, now comes a string of injuries. But we're this is looking far ahead to the future. But no, I think I just think it was a bit of a fluky play, right, on a tackle. It's a physical sport. Things like this happen. So the only thing you can hope for is that with the surgery, they get him back in a relatively good position because you know when I look at the standings, they're in a good spot because they're at 8-1,
Right.
but Calgary's right behind at 6-3. You really, really wouldn't want to be the team that falls to third, had to play.
God forbid fourth.
Yeah, personally, I don't see Saskatchewan being good enough to pass them unless Michael O'Connor isn't able to take isn't able to do what he needs to do. I think Saskatchewan's got their own problems. We'll get to that shortly, but I do think I do think like if you're BC, there's probably a lot of nervousness, but they know what they have in Michael O'Connor. We don't know what they have in Michael O'Connor.
And you haven't mentioned a guy that I'm very high on in Pitkin.
Yeah, you've been on the big on the Pipkin train, and I think it does certainly help that you have another starter that is capable of stepping in if Michael O'Connor isn't able to. I just found it a little interesting that you do have a guy who's had starting experience, but he's being overlooked by the younger guy who has no CFL starting experience.
Well, you know, uh, there's a judgment that has to be made. Fairness, equity, team building, right? He's the backup. He's the guy, the number two. He hasn't lost the number two position, right? And in organizations like BC that they've created with a very experienced head coach in Campbell, who's partially a GM as well, I believe that it's only smart to give him a chance to lose the backup position. That's what this is all about. This is going to be, he's going to go in. O'Connor's going to go in. He's going to show what can be done. If he can do it, he'll be in there. He'll ride out. This is a long run. We're talking 6 games here. He's on the 6th game, and they're saying he might be gone for 8. and that's their 8-1 is 9 and 8 is 17. That's one game before the season's over. It could be that bad. And that's why, the trophy business is a regular season thing. So, that's why I said we just lost an opportunity to celebrate, I think, personally, unless he comes back early. We lost an opportunity to appreciate how great this kid was. And to be honest with you, part of the reason why the season was so interesting to watch was because of this kid. I think it's a detriment not just to BC but the whole league. In
Yeah,
my
we kept saying that we need more Nathan Rourkes in the league, right?
And it would be good to have
And
him too.
yeah, no, it'd be good to have him too. And I think yeah, that's the part that everybody's like, oh no, like almost everyone except for the team that's playing him was probably like, oh no, like Nathan Works down. Unless you're a team that's wanting BC to not do well, a la Calgary, Saskatchewan, maybe more of the West Division teams. But if you're an East Division team, I'm sure some of the fans there were like,
They've got some games left with him.
yeah, right, and
It matters that he's not there to a lot of teams. Not from a perspective they're glad he's gone, but the reality is that team right now, there's a question. They're back where they were when the season started, when they said, Nathan Rourke's our guy, and everybody went, okay.
well, even coming into this year, I did not have a lot of faith in BC. But that's because I thought they were going with two very inexperienced quarterbacks. I just didn't realize that the inexperienced starter was going to turn out to be the most dynamic quarterback we have seen in a very long time.
Absolutely right.
And a
And
lot
well,
of teams are probably afraid to play the BC Lions because they got to go up against the Nathan Rourke. And they don't have the offenses really to keep up with them. The only way you can hope to beat them is you slow the guy down.
and if you're an opposing quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
you want to rise to the challenge. I mean, the only guy that had that mantle or mantra was Caleros. You know, no, and there are big-hearted guys out there like Trevor Harris and Bo Levi Mitchell, even Thompson here in Toronto that feel that they have the ability to keep up with the very best. But the reality is, what this kid did, he broke expectations for a quarterback in the Canadian Football League at this time, because what he's doing is generational. It's not, this season. This is why it's important. Hopefully, he'll get healthy and to be able to play again. We hope he does. This basically, what this will do now, and in a way, it's almost a good thing for the Canadian Football League, is that now has a he has been injured. And I'm not saying he's injury prone, but now the NFL folks that are watching him are now saying, okay, the kid got hurt, and we know the NFL will not draft players who are injured. If by their determination they're injury prone, they won't draft them, because there's so many football players to draft from. So depending on how you look at it, this means he'll be in the Canadian Football League another year and maybe finish his contract in the Canadian Football League for sure now, because he's got a road he's got to prove everything that he proved till now. I'm not saying it's irrelevant, because it's never irrelevant. He's fantastic. But from the perspective of being a team and wanting this guy on your team, injuries do matter. In football, they're a big deal. Big deal.
I just think though, if he's able to come back, an NFL team will say we'll give him that shot. I still do think so. It's because of his age, right?
Absolutely. That
The longer you wait, the less it's not going to be as likely to see him go there, because NFL teams, there's ageism to everything.
Yeah,
People say, why hasn't Zach Claros gone to look in the CFL?
it's getting
His
tough.
age. It's simply put, it's his age, because NFL quarterbacks want more athletic, young talent. Sure, there are a lot of old quarterbacks in the NFL, but that's because they know the game inside and out, right?
Yeah.
And there
And
aren't
this kid's
many.
Canadian. This quarterback's Canadian, but he grew up in four down football.
You did.
So there's that. Yeah,
It,
he's a great player. and we hope he gets speedy recovery. Hope he gets back real quick. Well, the other thing we wanted to talk about a little bit is that Labor Day's coming. The games are starting to really matter.
If anybody knows Game of Thrones, there's a little saying.
Winter is coming.
Oh, you do know that one.
Damn
Labor Day
right,
is
I know
coming.
that one. That was the first episode.
Yep. I,
Winter is coming.
I'm a little disappointed. I'm not gonna lie. As somebody who covers the Toronto Argonauts, they have, in a way, sort of made Labor Day not as relevant as it should be. Because, sure, what they have done now is the next two games are going to be vital between Hamilton and Toronto, but you could have done it a little bit later in the year. Like, Labor Day means so much because it's usually either the first time these two teams play each other or it's a crucial game and there's a lot of build up and lead up to it. I talked to a lot of fans and they feel cheated out of the Labor Day experience, and some of them are not as likely to go to Hamilton for that reason because they're just like, we've already seen this team so many times play each other. We
Value
don't
in that.
want to go.
Yeah, there's value in that. I mean, um, it's not that the games between Hamilton and Toronto are uninteresting. It's that they're so close together, and it's just it's odd. It's something we're not used to in football. I mean, it was just to show you how odd it is. It was odd in hockey that when we did the pandemic games where the Leafs were playing Edmonton 3 games in a row, it wasn't as much fun to watch
Yeah.
because it's the well, anyway, that's an opinion over here. Some of you out there might feel differently, but for me, the Labor Day game in itself was special because it wasn't a game on top of other games. It was a game you waited for. It's a game that you talked about. It's the game that everybody talked about. It's the one that fans of both teams looked forward to. It was the game where Hamilton fans would go, "We're going to Toronto to support our team." Well, they get to do it twice. So they could pick and choose, and when you pick and choose, that just is, by that statement alone, that tells you how important the game is when you can pick not to go to the Labor Day game and still get the same kind of satisfaction.
Hmm. No, very very much so, and even in the West, because you have the Labor Day game and then you have the Banjo Bowl.
Right.
Like, imagine if they did that. If they did what they did to Toronto, Hamilton, to Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, be a lot of upset fans.
Well, they don't like each other, Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, but it actually is a good parallel. I'm curious how they would react. Maybe next year they'll do that, and we'll see how they react to having 4 out of 5 games. Regardless, though, it's a game by game situation. These teams now, it looked like Toronto had the door open for them to blow the doors off the season, take a real good leap ahead of all the teams. They're only 1 game ahead of Montreal now. They're only 1 win ahead of Montreal,
Mhm.
and they're Hamilton's close. If Ottawa could turn things around, which to me is just, oh well. Labor Day is going to be interesting this just because of the importance of the game period everywhere. So Labor Day now, things are starting to tighten up. BC's got an injury that everybody's going, oh, this might recreate the standings. This is an opening for Calgary, some people might suggest. Because Calgary, without a number one quarterback's better, has proven to be really good. Now BC's got to do that. They got to prove they can be really good without a real top-notch quarterback.
Yeah. No, that's it, right? The margin for error for a lot of teams in the league is quite slim. You mentioned Toronto. Like, if Toronto loses the next two games, which they could very well do, they're out of first place, and Hamilton would move into either second or first,
Well,
depending on how it works. If how the tie breaking scenario, if Montreal were to win and all those things,
yeah. Well,
but
third is not an option right now. It doesn't look like an option for any of the Eastern teams.
nope. And you said Ottawa. Ottawa's no. Ottawa needs a head shake in many ways. So
They, they needed a better break at the beginning of the year without losing Mazzoli.
that's true.
That's too bad, and I feel sad for their fans, the organization, and football in Ottawa. And it speaks to my issue about there has to be a way to have enough quarterbacks that we don't end up in this situation with teams. I guess it's up to the teams, it's up to the general managers. But wherever you look, the Calgary has a decent backup. We think BC has a decent quarterback. He just hasn't proven it yet. We don't know if Toronto has a decent quarterback, only because we haven't seen him even play, right? So, Montreal has Trevor Harris. They have a guy that's really good that's injured that maybe could be a decent quarterback. Hamilton needs two quarterbacks because one can't do it on his own. Schultz is proven like Evans proved last year. So, the question is it something that's durable? So I wish we had in the league. I wish we had a better stock of quarterbacks. I wish there was a way to ensure that we had better quarterbacks in this league because it makes such a big difference.
It does. It really does. And this is why that's why I'm starting to advocate that the quarterback position be eliminated from the salary cap because other leagues, I bring MLS into this because they are the closest comparable to the CFL in terms of talent level and kind of how things work. You only get 3 spots in MLS to bring in a player at whatever value you want and wherever you want. Only three. The rest of the roster then has to be comprised in a certain way, right? You can't just bring in whoever you want on the team. So in essence, because we already know in the CFL the likelihood of a Canadian being a quarterback is very much unlikely. There's no incentive to starting a Canadian quarterback. So then let CFL teams invest in the position that's going to lead to the most success on the field and in some ways off the field. I understand that some will say, well, then this means that MLSC can go out and spend X amount on a quarterback that Saskatchewan and Winnipeg can't. I said, well, I'll say this: even the teams that spend the most on talent don't always end up winning, and we already know that going to get a good quarterback from the NFL doesn't translate to success at the CFL level either. I just think that when the talent pool is very small or the talent pool there's not enough money really to go around for these guys, and some guys leave because the money isn't there for them, even as a backup. It hurts the product of the league. We're seeing it now with Ottawa. We've seen it numerous times with teams who have to nickel and dime at certain positions, nickel and dime at the offensive line. This is nobody's fault but the CFL's, in my opinion, on that.
A lot of there's two things that people want that most of us disagree with. I don't disagree out of hand, but I disagree with. There's some people disagree out of hand. Um, is the fact that quarterbacks, um, you know, need offensive lines. So most of the offensive line is Canadian. One of the things that people want is they want to stop with the Canadian talent. Only bring in the players that are the best players that you can find. You bring them in, regardless of nationality. Number one, that's to help the quarterbacks. People are saying that's why they're saying that. Keep that in mind. The other thing they want to do to help quarterbacks is to have four downs because that's who that's going to help. It's going to help offenses, right? The fourth down, which is why people are wanting that. And the reality is that the Canadian Football League has entertained the ideas. That idea in particular, the four down idea, it's one that we heard there was a vote about it, and we know that there were some teams that were for it, and that's something that a lot of Canadian Football League fans, no. So the reality, folks, is the four downs is going to help the offense because right now, three downs in offense, you need a really special quarterback to make it work. We're seeing exactly what you need. You need, you know, You need a really good quarterback to make the three down system work.
No, you really do. And I feel that, you know, some teams have grown to accept what they have because there's not much better. Because there's so many fan base, oh, they should get a new quarterback. And it's like, well, who are you going to get? Because there's not a quarterback out there you can trade for. There's not a quarterback out there that you can really sign because we're finding out that it takes time for a quarterback to get accustomed to the CFL game. It is not the same as college or the NFL. So
That
offensively,
four down thing. It's that four down thing that
four downs, even bigger than that, 12 men on the field. That's
motion.
the bigger one. The motion, yard off the ball, knowing how the defense is going to work, the waggle, right? Like that's the big one. A lot of players struggle with that,
Well, there's a lot of
especially four
similarities
down.
though, David, between college football and the Canadian Football League. We have similarities with them. The motion is the same. The men are different, of course, and the downs are different. Um, so there's some similarities, and I suppose that's why people think it wouldn't be so bad to have four downs because a lot of people swear by college football in the U.S. It doesn't hurt their game to have four downs.
No, no, it really doesn't. It's just that's not the. If people say, "Oh, it's the three down," it's not the three downs that really makes it hard for a quarterback. It's the timing. It's the 12 men on the field. It is a lot of things. I mean, learning a playbook, right? CFL offenses are the language can be different than what they know. Um,
But
so
David, if we change to four downs, it would change the kind of players that are out there. It would change how CFL teams are made up. They would be made up more like NFL teams. If we went to four downs. The reason we have such quick, such quick DBs and the defenses are fast here is because they need to be because the offenses have to be fast because they got to make extra yards. They've only got two downs. They need an average of 5 yards per play. You
yeah,
know, and and so am I advertising for four downs? Not really, but I am exploring the idea in my head because I really believe the quarterback thing. How can it not be tied to four downs?
no, for sure. I, I've always I even talked to some people about the league, and I said I told some fans actually after the Argos game on Saturday because some were asking about attendance and stuff, and I said, what would you say if I told you that I talked to some people who never watched CFL before? I asked them, go and take a look at the game, and they said I can't get over the three downs. Literally, these are people who've never watched. So they came into this blind, not knowing anything really much about the CFL. I kind of explained some of the rules, and when they were watching, they're like, "I can't get over this three downs."
They
They
didn't.
just
They couldn't accept it.
they found it kind of affected the flow of the game a little bit, you know, because teams were struggling to get first downs. They're like, "Well, no wonder they're struggling to get first downs. They only really get two tries at it." I said, "That's
Well,
the point."
that's a real obvious answer, an obvious point. But we think the game is fine with three downs. I mean, it can be, but it has to be. It has to be in the hands of really good quarterbacks.
Exactly, and good
That's the
receivers.
issue. So either you make the game so the quarterbacks don't have to be as good, four downs, or you have to figure out a way of making sure every team can have a really good quarterback. And the only way to do that is, you have to compete for young good quarterbacks, not against the NFL directly, but subtly. Where you know I always imagine Doug Flutie. I always think of Warren Moon. There haven't been many of them. They were quarterbacks that were really good that just didn't, you know, have the chance at the time. A lot of why Warren Moon wasn't in the NFL was because he was black. We don't have that advantage anymore, you know, in the Canadian Football League. We lost that advantage. Nothing made me prouder of all the black quarterbacks that were in the Canadian Football League who weren't being brought into the NFL. That was an advantage we had. It wasn't even about money, you know. So that's why my idea and my thought is we really have to think about how much we spend on quarterbacks. We have to figure out a way to talk a quarterback into putting down his clipboard in the NFL and coming to the Canadian Football League. Problem is, he's got to learn that game, and that's hard. Which brings me around back to that four down thing. And this season is showing me that three downs really requires a very special quarterback or a good defense or great special teams. But offenses are not irrelevant, but you know, the running game, it's gone. We had a running game in the Canadian Football League. We used to have a running game. It doesn't exist anymore because the defenses can stop, you know, running backs,
Yeah,
you know. So a lot of our game has disappeared. The offense has been strangled by great defenses.
it
And
has.
unfortunately, the biggest culprit isn't the defenses, it's the three downs. And believe me when I say I don't want to say that, but everywhere I look, the three downs becomes a problem. And this kid Rourke, what he does, can you imagine what he could do if he played like that in four downs?
Yeah, no, for sure, and that's something a lot of people, and even myself, would be like, "Oh, I'd like to see him behind playing with." Now, here's the thing: he might not get the same talent of receivers. It's a little tougher in the
Yeah.
NFL, but a decent offensive line, a decent running game, all of those elements, and then you add his playmaking ability. That's why people are saying give him a shot in the end. Like, let's see him get a shot in the NFL because he has the talent, he has the skill set that can thrive in the NFL. I mean, at the same time, NFL teams are very picky in particular,
And
so
big.
they'll probably say, CFL caliber is not the same as NFL caliber.
Quarterback size in the Canadian Football League is a lot different than the quarterback size in the NFL today and tomorrow. Yesterday, maybe, but not today and not tomorrow. It's just going to get worse. You know, 6'6" quarterbacks are going to become like the goaltenders in hockey became 6'5", 6'4". You know, a
Yeah,
6'3"
no, I totally agree on that.
small goaltender in the National Hockey League now.
Exactly, and Drew Brees was kind of a unicorn in the NFL for the longest time because he was a short guy.
Right.
Doug Flutie when he was there. There aren't many like them.
Those guys aren't going to be around anymore.
No, not really. I'm trying to think who's the shortest quarterback in the NFL. Let me see if I can do a quick search on that.
Well,
Uh,
while you're searching, yeah. So quarterbacks are a little aren't as little anymore as they used to be. They're a little bit bigger. They're bigger, stronger, you know. And Rourke fits that mold, right? He has the size. He's pretty strong. Unfortunately, you know that the foot of his took took the brunt and ended up injured. But you know he could fit into an NFL jersey, I think. But this here, what happened to him, like I said, is going to delay his departure, give him an opportunity. Look, this kid's going to have a chance. And you want a Cinderella story, David? You want to? I'll give you a Cinderella story. He comes back with the last two or three games of the season. He pushes BC into a real battle for first. Wins the Western Division semifinal. Wins the division final. Goes to the Grey Cup and wins the Grey Cup.
that'd be a great story.
But that's a Cinderella story because of the injury that he's incurred now. But I love this kid. Loved him since you know everything that he's done. You know he's done with being a winner, and that's a great thing for him.
I'll make this last note before we talk about the games. Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson are
Ah,
the
yes,
only two starting quarterbacks in the NFL under 6 feet.
5'11", and it's not that I think Russell Wilson's 5'11", right?
He's 5'11". No, yeah, sorry. He's 5'11". Kyler Murray's 5'10".
Okay, so that's as close to 6 feet as you can get. Yeah,
Yep.
so yeah, that's something, and that's part of the reason why the Seahawks were thinking of trading them, right? They were going to go in a different direction,
And this is also why a lot of teams passed on Russell Wilson initially because
right?
he was short. And the other quarterbacks, they see the size, they see the length, and they think he's better. Russell Wilson turned out to be I can't really remember who else went in that NFL draft before him, but I would say a lot of teams made the mistake of not drafting Russell Wilson that year.
Well, there's a list of tools that they're looking for, and sometimes some tools can overwhelm other tools, and that's who Russell Wilson is. He defied some of the rules, and one of the rules was his size. Very smart quarterback. He'd be perfect in the Canadian Football League.
Yep. I'm just looking right now. Let's see. One, two, three, four, four. I think four quarterbacks went before him in that draft. Actually,
Wow,
five, maybe.
wow,
Five. Oh, no, six.
wow.
And quite a few were not very good.
Well, that's not a surprise. The draft doesn't bring out a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, and
No.
they're unicorns on their own. I mean, we all know the greatest quarterback to ever put on a throw a football. Was what, seventh round, fifth round? What was it? Brady was something like that.
Semantics.
Yeah, it is what it is. Okay, let's go to the Edmonton game. 30-12. Edmonton needed this win. This was a battle of the basement. We all knew that going in. The Elks looked like they were in trouble. They were well behind at halftime. But then something strange happened on the way to the final whistle.
Let's see. Ottawa forgot how to play football.
Something like that. There's still Darrell Walker is still not doing what he needs to do, but Kenny Lawler's been if there's a player there's no doubt in my mind at the end of the year when people say, okay, who's Edmonton's most valuable, and Kenny Lawler's name will come up before you even finish
You
the
don't
sentence.
even you don't even need to finish the question.
This guy's amazing. Worth
Um,
the money that he's getting paid.
I was just about to say he was the highest paid non quarterback, or at least highest paid non quarterback offensive player, $300,000.
A lot of money.
Not a lot of receivers make in the 200,000 range, and he was given 300,000. Good for him, by the way.
Excellent
Um,
for him.
right, and he's been, even though Edmonton has not been very good, he has been worth the money. Um, each and every game. I'm just looking here. I don't think that I think maybe there's been two or three games where he hasn't really been great, but he's always been a factor in almost every game he's played. He has been a factor, except I say only one game he has been a factor, and that was against Calgary, where no one on Edmonton played well. Like, that was the one where they were looked so outmatched.
And this was a game where Caleb Evans, who has been his second bad game after playing two really good ones, one of which was against Toronto, and he looked like he could be the answer in Ottawa, but he struggled in this game. And I mean, is Arbuckle going to be an option? That's the question that's being asked in the Ottawa world. Or maybe he's going to get a chance to play after all.
Yeah, I personally I don't think either. Like Caleb Evans, he has these spurts where he shows that he can do it, and then there's times where it's just it looks like the whole offense is lost out there. I can't really put it all on Caleb Evans. I think Ottawa's a team that is a bit lost, and it's funny because everyone's wondering what's the future of Paul LaPolice. Will he get let go?
Oh,
This is the trouble. I don't think he's been great as a head coach. I don't think head coaching is his forte. I think he's a great offensive coordinator. I think that's kind of his ceiling, in my opinion. But he's also lost his starting quarterback.
Yeah.
At the same time, you always have to plan that your starting quarterback isn't going to be there. No, like every head coach has to have that scenario down pat,
Nation has to think about that.
right?
That's an
And
organization thing for sure.
we know Jeremiah Mazzoli hasn't really been the beacon of great health,
Yeah. So injuries should be a surprise.
right? Nick, and now you asked if Nick Arbuckle's the solution.
We're
I
gonna find out.
I
He's
don't.
gonna get a shot. He's got to get a shot now.
You have to give him a chance to see. But personally, I don't think he's going to be the difference in taking Ottawa to the next level. Because I thought Caleb Evans showed against Toronto that he can make plays that he need to make to win games. It's just against Edmonton, and let's not forget, I think the worst performance Caleb Evans ever had in the CFL came against Chris Jones when Chris Jones was the defensive coordinator in Toronto,
Mm,
and the Argos just he had like they ate Caleb Evans alive, but he was also a rookie at the time.
yeah.
It was I think only his second CFL start. I'm I just don't want to see a young talent like Caleb Evans kind of get thrown to the side after
Well,
a few bad games. I'd like to see him in the best position possible to succeed and to see if he can handle it before I can definitively say, no, he's not a CFL quarterback. I think that's
on
unfair
a
to him.
positive note, you're right. He's not looking good. On a positive note, Taylor Cornelius. He's done some good stuff for Edmonton. You know, he's not burning the place up, but he's had a couple real good games where he's been a factor in winning, and in this game he was a factor, and I think that's really good.
Yeah, he's not losing them games. I see the potential there. For him, the important thing is don't try to do too much. There's times where I feel like he's a little indecisive if he's going to run the ball or if he's going to pass it, and then that you can't have those indecisive moments as a quarterback. You have to say, all right, I know that if I have to scramble, I'm just going to take off and run with it, or I know where my safety guy, my check down guy is going to be, and I can get it the ball to him.
Yeah,
Cornelius,
he did fine.
he did what they needed to do to win, and that was not and which was really don't make mistakes, and he didn't make any mistakes.
That's what matters. Let's
Yeah.
move on to Saskatchewan and BC. We talked about the injury. What we didn't talk about is, was there an injury or was patience run out for Fajardo, bringing in Fine?
I think the injury has affected himself mentally, where he just when you're dealing with an injury like that and you don't have the trust physically to get the job done, I think they made the right choice to pull him. It's unfortunate, but I think Saskatchewan can't. The margin for error is like almost nothing for them now, right? Not only do they risk not making the playoffs, but they in the West, but they risk the crossover not being an option for them if they keep losing, right?
Absolutely.
And
And
I just think
they need to stay away from the crossover. No Western team wants the crossover. That's, you go on the road, you go to the East. It's not a pleasant trip for them in the playoffs.
no.
It's going to be tough for them. Hamilton and Montreal. I'll tell you, Trevor Harris is. I think he's really done a great job in discouraging people who think that he can't find the end zone. In this game, he found the end zone when it mattered. Yeah, there were some interceptions. There was some play that that isn't perfect, but he did what you want a quarterback to do, is to make the big play, and he did that. And that was the difference in this game, because he made the last big play. So, there was one reception there that was just it was just amazing, very amazing, and to Reggie White. This game was awesome to watch. It was, if you're a Hamilton fan, oh, so close.
Yeah, no, I felt like for this game, it was what Hamilton allowed. They gave Montreal that door, that window to get through open, right? They all they need to do was make sure they didn't allow the backbreaking play. They did to Reggie White on the touchdown that tied the game. They get a field goal, and I'm like, I know. Sorry, they were no, it was tied, or they were up by one or something like that. Let me double check the score. Sorry, they were ahead after they got the field goal, and I'm like, I don't know. Like Montreal can now go down the field, and they only need a field goal. And then when they made the pass to Eugene Lewis, and he was going to be short of the field goal, I said, don't let him get through. Like, don't, just where you need to stop him. He can get the catch. Don't give up the extra yards. What happens? Eugene Lewis takes it about 10, 15 yards, and there's the field goal.
There it is. That
This
was
was a great. Trevor Harris trusted his offensive line to give him time, and when they gave him time, he made the most of it with those big plays down the field. And personally, I think he is well. It's not really. I don't think I'm going on a far limb to say he's the best quarterback in the East Division right now.
no, and you know what? He looks like a genius deciding to stay in Montreal, doesn't he?
Yeah, no, I think like I questioned it a little bit because of Darvin Adams, but the injury opened up the door. And look, if I'm Montreal, seeing how other teams are struggling at quarterback, and if you feel like Trevor Harris can stay healthy and maybe you have even some options behind him, I consider to see what the market's like for Darvin Adams.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be a question that will have to wait to be answered. Another point in this game with three big hits Donagala took. One, a tourist hit and running back in basically going after the ball that he just kicked, and the player handling it, he got a tourist hit. That poor guy, I'm telling you. And people suggest that kickers don't take any hits.
Kickers have feelings.
Yeah, he really got clocked a little bit. Well, the team that we cover, the Toronto Argonauts, played Calgary. They lost 22-19. It was another one of those games where the Argo offense disappears for a half. Sometimes it disappears for the first half, sometimes it disappears for the second half, but it disappears for a complete half. Not even a quarter. They've done that often. A very inconsistent offense. It's been a season that statistically this year, like Thompson's career in Toronto, he's brought in a lot of really nice stats. But it's like the team that finishes first that doesn't win the Grey Cup. You want to be a winner. You want to make that extra step. The question has to be asked. Sean Lemon, ex Argo, 2 sacks. Is it the offensive line and those 2 sacks highlighted? Is it the defense? Are the receivers not? And we've heard Thompson say it himself that there's a symbiosis lacking with, for example, Speedy Banks. Is there something that is there a trigger? Is there a point when they're going to work things out? Is there a point when the head coach is going to make great decisions, not make mistakes? All these are reasons why the team's not winning.
They need to figure this out quickly. They don't really have much time to figure these things out. And for in my opinion, I think it's not just the quarterback. I do think he doesn't have the trust in the offensive line sometimes. I think the receivers, like I don't know, it's way too inconsistent, and the play calling leaves a lot to be desired at times. But I also just think receivers going one way, he's throwing it a different way. Who's at fault? You don't. It's tough to know, really. But I think really, if it continues, you have to start thinking like this is a season the Argos can't let go, because this is not a team that's built for one season. This is for a long run. Their window is right now with some of these guys that they have, and so they got to figure this out. And if it feels like the same issues week in and week out, and the coach staff feels like they're doing the right things to fix it, then it's on execution, and that's on the players. And of course, it's going to go to the quarterback because he's the one that's leading the offense. So that's, I think it's execution right now. And if I'm the coaching staff, messages have to be sent that if you're not executing, you're not playing, because we cannot allow these issues to continue all the way through to the playoffs.
Are they asking, is the system asking the quarterback to do what he can't do? Is the system and the makeup of the team not conducive to making changes? For example, again, we saw an example of Calgary, their ability to go, okay, Bo Levi's not doing it. Let's put Mayer in. They put Mayer in, and he did enough to win. And the defense continued to give the Argos a hard time and show what they could do. And that's the thing that I've said over the past few years. It boggles my mind. This goes back to Caleros, where the Argos, for some reason, don't think they should have two quarterbacks on their team that can play quarterback in the Canadian Football League today. Today, they've loaded themselves up every year with quarterbacks that someday could be a decent quarterback.
Yeah.
But they haven't had a quarterback that, if the number one quarterback goes down, whether they have them or not, they might have had them, like with Arbuckle, but didn't go to them that much. It didn't work for them. That's the one time they had two quarterbacks with CFL experience. It didn't work. He ended up being jettisoned. Um, the Argos need to have a quarterback that they can throw out there, and Calgary was the example of what I've been talking about all season, and for the past couple, is you need to be able to throw a quarterback out there at least that can throw a monkey wrench into the defense that you're playing, so that you can at least make it a game, about your defense doing their job and having a bit of help from the offense, instead of zeros on the board, or field goals, or field goal and a half.
Yeah, and we know that this management group has the support of the president, so it's not going to be the management group that falls if this doesn't work too. So that, but they're going to have to live with that decision of not having a 1B option that other teams right now have, a la Montreal. And there's a reason why Montreal has the best chance right now to finish first in the East. It's because they got that depth of quarterback and they have that experienced depth at quarterback that could have been available to Toronto if they really wanted it, but they didn't. And they went with the guy that, unfortunately, whether you look at the stats or not, hasn't gotten the job done when they needed him to.
And it may not be him. Here's what I'm going to say about the head coach. Uh, Pinball Clemens and company. They decided to bring a young guy that was a quarterback coach. He wasn't an offensive coordinator. He was a quarterbacks coach.
Mm-hmm.
A great brain in the game of football, right? He goes back to the Alouettes, where he did some coaching of quarterbacks, and had that kind of ability. Went to Calgary. He looked like an up and comer. The problem with him looking like an up and comer is that he wasn't an up and comer. He was a guy that, as far as head coaching is concerned, I want to make that clear. And what we've seen is a head coach who sometimes seems to not know the rule book and understand the nuances in the Canadian Football League. He's made numerous mistakes that I find, if I look at them as not very good mistakes, and I'm not an expert in football, I'm the last person in the world who's going to say here that I know more than he does or anybody else in football. But if I can look at a mistake that the coach makes, and then repeated mistakes that he makes, judgment calls that he makes that really don't look good, I admit in hindsight, we've seen calls that it may not be the quarterback, it may not be the offense. It may be the head coach, not in what he creates, because I think he has a great playbook. I think they have a great playbook, but I think he has a problem with the period at the end of the sentence. Do you understand what I'm saying? He
Yep.
he he has most of it all figured out, and the reason I'm saying this is I'm creating an off ramp and saying that he really has to understand the nuances of the Canadian Football League from a head coach's perspective. And he doesn't seem to have that, because or he doesn't have the support team around him that insulates him from some of these decisions. I don't know if Barker can do it. Like he's there, should Barker be closer to, you know, to the head coach and just listen to what's going on and then just say, hey, hang on a second. What works in the Canadian Football League, you can't do that. There's a rule over that. I know it sounds stupid on my part, but I really think that a lot of the little mistakes that have been made over the couple of years that he's been the head coach have left many of us scratching our heads. And here's the scary part: it may leave some of the players scratching their heads, especially the ones that know the Canadian Football League.
Yeah. No, for sure. Definitely. And it's a
Well,
perfect way to end it. Perfect way to end it, Frank.
okay, okay. Thank you, David. He's David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, Aaron Live, Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sorry, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time.